Welcome to Energy and Personal Excellence. This is Sachin Karnik. Today we're going to begin our series on anatomy and physiology as related to the mind and the energy within the mind. So this is a very interesting endeavor. We will be going through major ideas in anatomy physiology right from basic level and then look at their connection to mental processes as much as possible, although that's a very deep subject, and then see the role of energy within that and how we can utilize our personal power for the best health, physical health and mental health that we can obtain. Right, so I want to begin by defining anatomy, and in any definition of anatomy, what you will find is that it is the science of body structures and the relationships among them. So we have a body. We can look at your body right now. You have your hands and legs, and you've got bones, and so there's the head, and there's a chest, and so there's these different structures. So the structural study of the body is anatomy, the structure of it, and then how the various parts or the structures are related to each other is also part of anatomy. And in the history of anatomy or anatomical research, this was discovered, the various structures were discovered through a process of dissection, which literally means cutting apart or act of cutting. So dissection is the careful cutting apart of body structures to study their relationships. So that's the whole endeavor of dissection, dissection to study the various parts and their relationships. So with the physical body, there has been an extensive study over so many years in the past of trying to unravel the structure of the body. So that's anatomy. And that's a very big area. So we are going to really go into it because to really understand or grasp the mind-body connection, we have to start from the foundation. And the foundation is really quite empirical which refers to our senses, which refers to what we can see. Well, we can see a body. We can see our own body to some extent at least. And then we can see other people's bodies and those people who have studied, cadavers and whatnot for the purpose of research, you can see the various body parts, etc. Now, when we use the word mind, as you may remember from previous recordings and lectures, I'm using the word mind with four specific different parts or aspects, and that is thought, emotion, memory, and desire. And then the fifth part, which is kind of underneath the mind or more fundamental than the mind, is energy. So we can think of it that way, as the physical body is like one layer, and then the internal layer deeper than that is the mental body, sometimes called the subtle body, or we can just call it the mind, which is thought, emotion, memory, desire. And there's of course energy, so energy within the physical and the mental reality. So the mind uses energy in its entirety, and the physical body, of course, cannot live without energy. So when we look at thought, emotion, memory, desire, and then energy, you might be wondering, what about something like the soul or God? Well, if you want to use the word soul, sometimes some people use the word soul as identical to energy. In other traditions, in other ways, sometimes soul is considered to be much more deeper than energy, where energy comes from the soul. Certain types of energies, or certain type of spiritual power is existing within the soul, and then because of the soul, that's where the life comes from, or the soul is the life force. So that's a esoteric question which we will not get too much into right now. In other recordings, other sections of the personal development program, that is discussed and will be discussed in much more detail. But just for right now, what I'd like you to keep in mind is that there's the physical body, and this word anatomy refers to the structure and the relationship among the various structures of the physical body. All right, so that's that. Now, anatomy has 10 different subspecialties. Okay, and they are, I'm just going to say them for you. You don't have to memorize these. We'll see what the relationship is in just a moment. But they are embryology, developmental biology, cell biology, histology, gross anatomy, systemic anatomy, regional anatomy, surface anatomy, radiographic anatomy, and pathological anatomy. So I'm going to go through each of the definitions for all of these and then look at the connection with the mind and then with energy and see where that leads us. Okay, and remember, these recordings are all exploratory and are meant for dialogue. Okay, so the first subspecialty in anatomy is embryology, and that is the study of the first 8 weeks of development after fertilization of a human egg. So we have all gone through that. Obviously, that's why we're alive. That's why we're here. At one point, all of us were just one cell, a fertilized cell, and that's how our body began. So this is a tremendous thing. Many times we don't reflect upon where we came from. We don't reflect upon developmental process. And if you really trace it back to this particular lifetime, if you believe that, whether you believe there's multiple lifetimes or not, at least in this lifetime, we were one cell. That's called the zygote. That's a fertilized egg. And the study of embryology is the study of the first 8 weeks of the development after fertilization of a human egg. So that entire field, anatomical field, looks at the development of the various structures that happens in the first 8 weeks. Now, how is the mind developed here? Is there a mind being developed here? What do you think? Or is there the beginning of a mind? Is there a soul that has entered at some point in these 8 weeks? Or is there something like a soul that has entered as soon as the fertilization occurs? What are your thoughts about this? This is an exploratory journey, and I'm really going to try to bring an interdisciplinary approach to these recordings. Anybody can look up anatomy, physiology in any encyclopedia or any book, and you can, see the definitions of all of these. There's a lot of information out there on all this. But how do we take this information and make it very applicable in our lives right now with a great sense of mystery and wonder and gratitude about where we have come from? So think about this, that when the sperm hits the egg and there's a fertilized egg, there are a whole host of reactions that occur, and that will be explained in further recordings down the road. But there are so many reactions that have to happen exactly the right way, in the right kind of environment, so that the growth happens, so that the embryological development happens. And the interesting thing here is that there are chromosomes within the sperm and the egg cell, and that's the blueprint for constructing the whole body. So that's the area of genetics. So look at the miracle of this, that there is this very, very deeply embedded anatomical blueprint in the sperm and the egg in the form of chromosomes, and then the chromosomes come together, 23, they become 46 together, and that becomes a fertilized egg. And then from there, this massive reaction begins, and then